Duolingo has faced its fair share of controversies in its past. In October of 2020, Duolingo would introduce a new heart system, which limited how many mistakes free users could make before they had to wait 4 hours or pay with a limited currency. Likewise, in November of 2022, Duolingo removed its learning tree format and replaced it with a very linear and simple learning path, which many users critiqued at the time for being too simple and infantilizing. In spite of this, Duolingo has been consistently regarded as being the only app on the market that is actually able to keep you engaged and teach you a new language while doing so. With Duolingo's unique characters, very strong marketing, and many social features such as leaderboards that promote competition, it just made sense to use it over some other boring app. In fact, this gamification of learning a language is Duolingo's main strong point, and every update makes that more and more clear. For example, the removal of free infinite tries, while annoying to the long-time user at the time, actually ended up bringing in more users, as the punishment of making a mistake would not only give users a thrill to get their answers right, but also improve the competitive aspect of the app, as a mistake would now mean having to wait several hours until you were able to progress further on the leaderboard. And this was actually the original vision for the app when it launched in the late 2011 by two men named Severin Hacker and Louis von Ahn, who was also the creator of the well-known CAPTCHA system, which was later purchased by Google. Louis would state that he saw how expensive it was for people in his community in Guatemala to learn English, and Severin was quoted saying that free education will really change the world, and both wanted to provide an accessible way of doing so. The dual-purpose model of CAPTCHA, which gave users fun puzzles to solve while also getting useful data out of them, was a heavy inspiration for Duolingo's original design, and after some funding, the app would release for the very first time. The founders considered making Duolingo a non-profit organization, however, Louis ended up judging it as an unsustainable model, forcing them to somehow profit from their users while still staying true to their goal of free education for all. This led to Duolingo giving its users real-world documents to translate as practice, and would then sell this as a crowdsourced translation service to various websites such as CNN. So for example, a foreign person learning English would translate English content into their native language, improving their skills and giving Duolingo usable translations to sell. This allowed Duolingo to monetize without charging users. This made Duolingo the first professional language learning app that was completely free, and when it officially released to the public in June 2012, over 300,000 users signed up within weeks entirely through word of mouth. From the start, Duolingo was simpler and more casual, having a linear lesson structure, making it stand out from other apps at the time that took themselves more seriously. However, problems soon arose for Duolingo. Users would begin by engaging strongly with the app, but would quickly quit after realizing that learning a language was more difficult than they had anticipated. And the translation service, which was their only source of monetization at the time, ended up not working as well in practice. It wasn't as scalable as they had hoped, and it was difficult to ensure quality, which turned off many companies looking to rely on Duolingo for translations. But Duolingo still had something special, and seeing its massive spike in popularity, even though short-lived, told the founders that they had tapped into something big. They noticed that the only users who stayed were ones who could actually dedicate themselves to continue learning, but the majority of people who quickly quit only joined for the gamified aspects of learning and only stopped using the app because it just didn't feel fun enough to stay around. Duolingo, blinded by this temporary success, began gamifying the app further to keep people engaged just as real games do. In a big update, Duolingo introduced an experience system, which gave people reasons to grind out lessons and let users show their actual progress quickly to their friends. Additionally, streaks were introduced to encourage consistency, which would also reward users for maintaining daily activity. Users would be rewarded with the final big feature of this update, which was a brand new virtual currency called Lingots. These would be earned through challenges, leveling up, maintaining streaks, and completing skills, and could be spent on cosmetic items for the Duo mascot and bonus lessons. Alongside a few user interface polishes, this marked a very big shift for Duolingo's future as a gamified language app, with future updates adding features such as shop items and quick lessons to further push the notion of Duolingo being a fun, quick game rather than a slow and painful learning tool. Now that more people were consistently using the app, Duolingo had to find a new way to monetize and scale profits. In 2016, they introduced the Duolingo English Test, which was an online English proficiency test aimed at international students. It cost around $100 and would become a key revenue stream for Duolingo. But just a year later, in 2017, Duolingo launched their very first subscription service called Duolingo Plus. A controversial change was that this came with playing ads between each lesson or after making mistakes to encourage people to subscribe to Duolingo Plus, which would remove the ads. This was met with heavy criticism, as the original vision of Duolingo was to keep the platform completely free without any ads or subscriptions, and it was a core selling point of the app. However, the massive inflow of new and casual users ended up working in favor of this change, as many of them were already used to seeing ads in free mobile apps and accepted it as a fair trade-off for free language learning. At this point, many long-term users began quitting the app, but overall user growth remained strong, and Duolingo saw this as their only way forward. In the oncoming years, Duolingo would push out multiple changes to become the app we know today. They rolled out a leaderboard system to let people compete with other players, added hearts to penalize mistakes and encourage players to get their subscription, replaced lingots with gems, which were purchasable with real money, and simplified their interface to make the app super easy to get into. Duolingo would defend these changes by claiming it kept users learning for longer, but the reality was that the users became players and were simply addicted to the quick social game disguised as language learning. But Duolingo never faced any real backlash, especially with their target audience shifting to a newer generation of kids and young adults who enjoyed the gamification features of the app, as well as all the memes and marketing done by Duolingo on social media. In 2023, Duolingo decided to implement AI into their lessons for the very first time. The lessons themselves weren't affected, but new features were added that did use AI to teach, such as on-demand tutoring and a new roleplay mode that let you converse with AI in the language of your choice. These features were locked behind the new subscription tier called Duolingo Max, and just like it did a decade ago, Duolingo was starting to try appealing to a new type of customer. Most long-term Duolingo users at that point were not part of the generation that grew up with AI, and felt as though it had no place in the app for reasons varying across each user. However, this wasn't comparable to what Duolingo was secretly about to do, and new information finally leaked in 2025. An email sent by Lewis, the CEO, to the Duolingo team stated that Duolingo is officially going to be quote-unquote AI first. He compared this to their previous risky choices that ended up making the app as big as it is today, and claimed that this is just a platform shift towards AI that every company will end up following soon. This would mean that AI features would be pushed as a key selling point of the app, and that their future lessons and courses would also become generated by AI. The biggest problem, however, was about a section of the email that talked about replacing human workers with AI, both contractors and the long-term employees. Approximately 10% of Duolingo's contractor workforce was laid off back in 2023, with unknown additional cuts in 2024 and 2025. For many people, this was a big turning point. They felt as though shifting the company to be AI first, as Lewis wrote in his email, would just turn Duolingo into a glorified chatbot that you had to pay to talk to, and that the lessons would just become AI slop. Many people also disliked the trend of AI replacing human jobs in general, and felt as though this change was discounting the average person, which is also the average user of Duolingo. This decision was defended by Lewis, however, stating that they would only utilize AI to automate manual labor and leave employees to focus on the creative aspects of the app without having to worry about doing repetitive tasks. The Duolingo marketing team tried to make more silly memes in hopes to ease the tension, just as they had done in a previous controversial marketing stunt where users had to revive Duolingo, but this heavily backfired as everyone felt that their concerns weren't actually being taken seriously and that Duolingo was trying to shut them up with memes. As of now, nearly all Duolingo social media accounts have been erased, having 0 posts, an empty profile picture, and a bio saying "Gone for now 123", followed by a few emojis. This was meant to be a clear in-character marketing stunt for Duolingo, but people just took this as a temper tantrum, and the controversy spread from there, with even the official Duolingo subreddit turning its back on the app, encouraging users to move to other language learning apps. Despite previous AI controversies in 2023, Duolingo would still report strong financial performances, with a 38% revenue increase in early 2025. However, with this new controversy, it seems as though even Duolingo isn't sure how this will end up affecting their profits and user engagement. Duolingo has been able to create 148 new language courses in under a year utilizing AI, which was a feat that previously would take them 12 years to do. But many users are protesting now against Duolingo becoming quote-unquote AI slop, and whether or not this will end up working out for Duolingo, this is without a doubt the biggest controversy Duolingo has faced in its lifetime. So what do you think? Is Duolingo in the right here? Should they continue pushing for AI? Should they lay off AI, but then perhaps another language app will use AI and dominate the market? Let me know by leaving a comment, subscribe for future updates on apps, services, and all the other good stuff, and thank you for watching.